Reading a book a day has become the new standard. And nowadays, YouTube is full of these people.
You know, I read a book a day not to show off. It's again about the knowledge.
365 books in 1 year.
And it's impossible not to ask ourselves how the hell did these people find the time to read all of these books? Don't they have friends to meet up with, fish to feed, plants to water? They made us believe that if we read enough books, if we have enough
Knowledge.
a Ferrari will magically appear in our garage. I'm still waiting for mine. It's a shame this type of advice is circulating around the internet, but in the end of the day, I believe crappy advice is an inevitable part of the personal development ecosystem. What's more insidious, in my opinion, is the philosophy behind them: knowledge materialism. Materialism is defined as a modern obsession to accumulate and pursue material possessions and physical comfort. People spend days waiting in line at Apple stores to buy the newest iPhone, although they have the previous ones in their pockets. And Black Friday shopping is now considered a family tradition. But this dynamic is not merely present here. In 1970s, Georgian Trumpa published a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, which directly attacks this same dynamic, but in a spiritual context. Spiritual seekers jump off one teacher to the next one, impatiently waiting for that big spiritual revelation, which usually and unfortunately never happens. If materialism or this obsession with accumulating is subtle enough to infiltrate even spiritual pursuits, knowledge is definitely a usual suspect. I call knowledge materialism to this fixation with reading an increasingly number of books, taking an increasingly number of courses, and forgetting why we're really learning in the first place, which is to transform ourselves and our worldview. We confuse the means for the end, and we're paying a high price for it. But distinct from this profound issue, there are some practical reasons why we shouldn't be reading a book a day, and here they are. Issue number 1. If it's worth reading in a day, it's probably not worth reading at all. Or, not every book is created equal. There are some non-fiction books that literally change the way we collectively see the world, where there are some books that should have never been written. Just like the phrase, "you are what you eat," "you are what you read" might even be more valid. What we read defines how we see each other, the world, and probably most importantly, ourselves. And that's why we need to start making the distinction between mediocre or good enough books and high quality books. Proponents of the read a book a day idea say that books only have 1 or 2 gems in there. But if that's true, why don't I look for a summary in Google? Apps like Blinkist, for example, let us read the key lessons from more than 2,000 non-fiction books in 15 minutes. Why would I need to buy 365 books if an app can do it for me? On the contrary, high-quality books are impossible to be read in a day. Every sentence, every page, every chapter contains a life-changing idea. I'm talking about that kind of book that keeps us thinking for days on end. Those ones you don't want to miss a page because each sentence builds upon the previous one. I am referring to that book that when you think back, you cannot even imagine where your life could be if you haven't read it. This leads us to issue number 2. Change takes time, or Rome wasn't built in a day. In my opinion, it's just staggering how profound and mind-blowing a really good book can be. Fair enough. They're difficult to find and some trial and error might happen before encountering one, but when you do, oh my god, you know you're in for a treat. But what's more impressive for me is this belief that you can read this type of books in a day and go on to the next one, almost like nothing happened. It's almost like meeting your dream girl, going for a date, come home and start using Tinder again. Just as we take time with a good meal, we should take our time with inspiring books. We should read them, reread them, think about what we just read, how it might apply to our lives, how it will change the way we think about the world and the implications it has for us and from everybody else. Instead of devouring them, a better way to proceed might be to enjoy them and let the books do its job, to change us. But as we probably know, change takes time. It's definitely easier for us to just read the next one since it's a brand new day, but we must not forget the real reason we read books in the first place. Okay, we pointed out some flaws on this new reading paradigm, or what I call knowledge materialism. Now, what will reading a book with the correct intent look like? Look, there's no definitive answer since every person's ways of learning is different, but here's some tips I found useful. Tip number 1 is to see books as life manuals. There's almost nothing that bothers me as much as lending books. And it's not because I'm greedy, I think so. It's because I know I will need them in the future. When we view books as life manuals and not as novels, we don't read them just once, we read them often. For example, each time I have a fight with a friend or some member of my family, I quickly read my summary of crucial conversations. I keep coming back to my business books to build Inerize business plan. And when I sit down and write the scripts for my videos, I revisit on writing well. Books are literally advisors. When we read one, the author is giving us his or her advice, as if in real time, and that's insane. Let's not underestimate the power of that. Keep books handy, you never know when we might need them. Tip number 2. Set minutes per day, not pages per day. A few years ago, I remember I had the goal of reading a book a week. Since I wasn't really reading on Saturdays, I had 6 days to read a whole book. Sounds good, right? It doesn't work. The problem appeared when I had to read books like A Brief History of Everything from King Wilber, with more than 600 pages. Supposedly I had to read 100 pages a day, but after page 50 I was almost having a seizure. Reading is not about going through pages with the objective of fulfilling a certain goal, in this case, number of pages. What if instead of setting pages per day, we set up minutes per day dedicated to just reading? It will enable us probably to take our time to absorb what we read, to do the exercises, and to contemplate what's in front of us. Remember, it's not about how many books or pages we read, it's about learning, improving, and transforming. Tip number 3 is every time you read a book and finish it, you need to ask yourself, how's this book gonna change my behavior or my worldview? The true reason why we read books is to change, to transform, to improve, or to make our worldview a little bit more accurate, a little bit more healthy. But as we probably know from years of experience, change doesn't come naturally. It's hard work. I struggle every day to make these videos, to work in my writing, to go to the gym, to eat healthy, and much, much more. Sometimes I succeed, but most often I don't. But this change I'm working on is not possible without a conscious effort on my part. Each time I read a book or advice, I ask myself how this thing that I've just read is going to change my behavior or my way of thinking. It was easy for me to read that cold showers are good for my body. It's really hard for me to wake up in the mornings and go do it. If a book you read didn't change how you think, feel, or act, it didn't fulfill its purpose. And without your conscious attention, that's not going to happen. That's why it's super important to ask ourselves, how's what I'm reading is going to change me? What I'm going to do differently? Tip number 4 is reading a book is only the beginning. It might prove quite challenging to read and finish a good book, but once I'm finished, I feel okay with myself. Proudly, I stuck my book in the bookshelf and started a new one. If I only knew that was just the beginning. The truth is that the easy part of all of this process is to read and finish the book. The hard part is actually implementing and actualizing what the book is trying to communicate. I can read thousands of books about following my passion, but if I don't have the balls to discover and pursue it, the books were completely useless. Once we understand that reading a book is just the beginning, it's the moment we will see actual results from them. Books are meant to help us step outside our current worldview, way of life, and cultural narrative. They are capable of expanding our capacity to think, act, and feel. I personally know that my life would be completely different from the one that's now if I hadn't read the books I've read. And that's a miracle. The moment we forget this and use books as personal trophies to stack in our library is the moment we stop using them and we let them use us. And that's unacceptable and disrespectful to the author's effort to change our lives, or even the world. Let's start respecting the books, let's start respecting the authors, and let them do its job, changing. Hey guys, this is Juan Cruz from Inerize. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, I recommend doing it. Also, you can go to Inerize.com, there you will have more and more content. You can also share this video with a friend and give it a thumbs up. The whole purpose of this channel is to help people change their paradigms. We need people that think differently, that have the balls to change the world and change themselves. We need people that are willing to go against the grain and defy what it means to be human. It would be amazing to share this journey with you all. Hope you see you again soon, and again, thanks for watching.